Okay, right. What we are going to talk about tonight is why you should learn CW and how to learn CW. Nothing magical about it. If you think about CW, we have got something like half of the amateur bandwidth dedicated to CW. And if you're not on there, you're missing out. So there's an enormous amount of bandwidth that you can get access to with CW. If you go on 40 meters on a Saturday afternoon, you'll find that the band is edge to edge, usually with a contest or with, be it at special event stations or people just rag chewing. You can't get your words in edgeways. On the CW end of the band, there's plenty of room. 300 hertz separation, you can work anybody you like. So there is a very good reason for learning CW. Okay, let's have a little look about what CW actually is and where the word comes from, because CW is not Morse code. Yeah, CW is not Morse code. This is a spark gap transmitter, and what you've got here is a large tuned circuit, and the aerial forms part of that tuned circuit as well. You've got an EHT transformer here, DC EHT transformer, some batteries down here, and a key. When you key this thing gets a couple of thousand volts up it, and this thing starts to oscillate and discharges itself across the spark, giving you a very, very rough and wide banded RF signal. It's called damped wave, a damped wave, because what happens is this thing discharges, the RF wave disappears down, diminishes away to almost nothing. Damped wave. These are the original transmitters. Later, and I believe the Titanic had something similar to this one, they wanted to try and improve the modulation because this just gave a rushing noise in the headphones, thumps and rushing noise. So they actually had the spark gap, multiple spark gaps, and they spun them at a certain speed, rotary spark gap. And what that did is imparted some modulation to the CW, so it was easy to receive. So this, a rotary spark gap, is a damped wave transmitter. Moving on a little bit, we get to about 1908 when the Audion tube is invented, and that transformed everything. These are early Audion tubes, basically triodes, glass triode valves. And around 1920, these two guys, Edwin Armstrong and Alexander Messinier, developed the vacuum tube oscillator. And that changed everything, because now you had a continuous source of RF energy at a very specific frequency. So you weren't cluttering up from 200 meters to 1,000 meters. That's how wide a spark gap transmitter signal is, with a huge great hump right across the band. Now we've got very accurate frequency controlled oscillations that are continuous wave, not damped wave. So that's where CW comes from, continuous wave. And when we key a transmitter in continuous wave, we interrupt the continuous wave. So it's actually called ICW. So Morse code should be called ICW. But the correct term ICW, but it became synonymous with it because it was the only way in those days to impart information on the CW signal. The only way. So Morse code and CW were the only way of transmitting anything or any message. So that's why CW has become synonymous with Morse code, but it's not. It's really the technology that's driving the carry wave. So what advantages does CW actually have? Surprising number, in actual fact. If we have a look at the signal to noise ratio between a signal that's just on the threshold of hearing above the noise, and we reference that to a CW signal along this line here, have a look at what's happening with an AM signal. It is around about 28 dB below a CW signal. So it's 28, that signal has to be 28 dB stronger to be received just above the noise that you can hear with a CW transmission. SSB is down here, 17 dB down. 17 dB is a lot. You think about it, you work out what 17 dB actually is in terms of multiplying it together, in terms of transmitter power. FM, minus 14 dB. RTTY, because it's a little simpler, minus 4 dB. The only things that actually can beat it are the digital modes. JT65, FT8's up here as well. This chart was made in 2013, so it doesn't have FT8 on it. It wasn't around in 2013. But PSK 31 and JT65 were. So if you're in digital modes, you have these huge advantages over CW in terms of signal to noise and being able to be received at longer distances. That's why digital modes work. So, improved receiver sensitivity compared to analog modes. Narrowband CW filters reduce noise. I don't know if you've ever you've got these modern FM transceivers where you can widen the span, and you've got a waterfall display. You're on about 10 kilohertz, and you widen it, and suddenly you get some noise on the display. And you widen it a bit further, you get more noise. You'll see this on an SDR receiver. As you widen the bandwidth, the noise floor comes up, because noise is cumulative across the bandwidth of the signal. CW only 300 hertz wide, and you've got some narrow filters in there, that noise goes down, so you've got a great signal to noise ratio advantage with CW. You've got a huge effective increase in transmitter power. Think about it, CW plus 15 dB above an SSB signal. What would you have to do on SSB to be heard above the noise with the same power? Think about it. 2 watts of CW is equivalent to 68 watts of SSB. That's 10 dB plus 3 dB plus 2 dB. Yeah? Times 10, double it, times 2. Yeah? 100 watts of CW, 3.2 kilowatts is the equivalent of SSB. So if you want to get out there with an ordinary rig, you don't need to spend $6.5 grand on a linear amplifier for SSB. Sorry, Richard. But if you do, I'm sure it'd be a very nice one. Oh, working well at that. So there you go. That's what CW actually does. That's a good reason to use CW. Very narrow bandwidth, as we said earlier. When the band's full of people on SSB, 3 kilohertz wide roughly, and a bit wider if you're Italian, 6.5, 10 kilohertz wide, with the wick, turn up to number 11. Yeah, hello, contest. Yeah, let's talk. Anyway, so 300 hertz is your signal with a good CW receiver. Think how many stations you can get in a bandwidth of 50 kilohertz. A lot. Just have a look the next time. If you've got a waterfall display, next time the 80-meter club contest comes on 80 meters, put it on your waterfall. It's an education to see just how many stations are crammed in that tiny bandwidth. So you can get an awful lot more. I've never ever struggled, apart from the middle of a contest, to work CW, even when the bands were busy. Much easier to get good DX results from short compromised antenna. Of course it is. You've got a 17 dB advantage. If your antenna is not quite on song and it's in the back garden, then CW will really help you out. And it's an international language. The abbreviations, the Q codes, everything about CW can be understood in Thailand, in Antarctica, in Russia, wherever you are, people will speak the same language. That's not true with SSB. You'll get regional dialects where it makes it difficult to understand them. They may not understand you. CW, that's not the case. You stick to the standard abbreviations, standard Q codes. Everywhere around the world, people understand you. And reduced interference. If you read your license manual, they will tell you in no uncertain terms that if you're causing KRM to the guy next door, SSB is the thing that's going to do it, because it's constantly fluctuating wideband AM or audio. Whereas CW is likely to be heard as a few clicks and thumps. It's not the same problem. So, simplicity, portability, and low cost of entry. You can start with these things. We've seen this talk a few weeks ago, this one. The Rockeros transmitter, 2 watts of CW, equivalent to 68 watts of SSB, this thing. 2 watts, 30 quid, 30, 40 quid, something like that. This is the QCX. This one's about 50 quid, or now £2,000 if you pay Trump's tariffs, thereabouts. But yeah, look at it. It's and this is a really good all the way across the band. That's fixed frequency. This isn't, but you'll pick that up for 60, 70 quid. Very nice little kit. And look at this thing, little OXO. I think you've built a little OXO, haven't you? Most people have. pence, you know, pence for an OXO transmitter, and it's going to kick out about a watt. So it's really cheap. You can get on the bands really quickly. Old equipment, vintage equipment, even an old Army 19 set might sound a bit rough, but it'll get you out on CW. So you've got all these opportunities with CW. Now, if we're going to use CW, we've got to be able to learn CW. How do we not learn CW? And there are quite a few ways that might surprise you. This thing is the work of the devil. And you'll see this in every American magazine. Right? This is called a Morse tree. And it starts you up here. You go this way, you learn the E, 1 dot, I, 2 dots, S, 3 dots, H, 4 dots, 5 dots. And you're listening to this CW, and it's going, you know, turn this thing on, not going anywhere at the minute. What are you going to do when you're hearing that and you're thinking about it? You're going to go, what is that 1 dot or 2 dot or 3 dots? You're going to start counting. You're going to start using your conscious mind and think about, what have I just heard? Is it 1 dot, 2 dots, 3 dots, a dot and a dash, 2 dashes? We don't want to start counting. These things are the work of the devil. But you'll find them embedded in even the ARRL's Morse code training programs. They start like this. American Morse tutors will always start using a Morse tree very similar to this one. Oh dear, these things. You know, learning patterns, recognizing a pattern with your eyes. You know, you're pushing it into a lookup table in the front of your head, the part of the conscious brain. A lot of this stuff came out. The military tried to get people to write the numbers quickly. So there was a preferred form of script for certain letters. But you know, you get all kinds of stuff plastered all over the internet, and it's absolute garbage. This is terrible. You don't want to be looking at this. You don't want to see these patterns at all. Yeah? Throw them away. If I have a look at this Kanga Morse tutor, on the top of it, it does not have a table like that. It has got phonetics. Di-da, di-da, di-da. Yeah? Because it's already putting the sound into your ears, putting it into the part of your brain that learns language. Yeah? So it's using phonetics. And these things, Morse flashcards. Everybody had these. You know, you played it, you turned it over, and guess what it was? All you're doing is recognizing a pattern with your eyes. Now, what will happen if you start recognizing patterns and creating this lookup table in your heads? You'll build this in your brain. And you'll hear it, did-a-da, and you'll go, hang on, did-a-da. Ah, it's now. What else is it? T-da. There it is. Write it down. You get to 12 words a minute, you'll start smoking. And beyond 12 words a minute, you're giving up because you simply can't look it up fast enough. Your conscious mind can't multitask, can't handle it. So we don't want to be doing anything that's visual. Slow and steady, slow Morse. Yeah. No. Why? You're starting to recognize the pattern. Dash, dot, dash. Yeah. Slow Morse is also telling you to put it into the visual part of your brain, the conscious brain. We don't want slow Morse. We want, yeah, because you can't count fast enough. But every one of those sounds has a unique pattern to it. And it's the sound that you're hearing. In at the ears, out of the memory. Yeah, that's how you learn Morse. What you can do is play the character fast, but leave a long gap. Yeah? Fast character speed, slow word speed. So we'll get something like, turn the volume up. That's called the Farnsworth method. Developed about 1950s, roughly, by an American amateur. He had a series of tapes, or LPs, I think he had both tapes and LPs, where he did that. You could speed them up and slow them down. So we need to have longer gaps, time to think, but not time to count. We don't want to recognize the character, we just want to hear the sound. That's what we need to do. How do we learn to speak? we don't give a kid of this age a book of general relativity for babies, yeah, because he can't read. The poor little brain of this poor little chap here hasn't yet developed to understand that that means the. But he can hear it. He doesn't know what a the is, but he goes, love you, mummy, yeah, they'll spit and be sick on you, yeah. But that's what they're doing. That's how a child from birth learns to speak. And within a few months, they're starting to mimic the parents, blow bubbles, start to make sounds, and it's all coming in the ears, logged into the subconscious, and being put out as a recall. So children are learning from a very early age the sound of letters, the sound of words, a sound associated with a rusk or with a toy or something like that, or mummy, daddy. All these sounds are registering, and this kid's got a brain like a sponge. Yeah, the learning rate, developmental learning rate, the brain of a child of that age is incredible. So that's how we learn languages. And it's exactly the same when we learn a foreign language. We go to night school. Yeah? We don't start reading the stuff at first. We actually sit and talk to people. So the best way to learn a foreign language is go to the other country, throw yourself into it, and eventually you pick it up, which you do. You might not be able to read the newspaper, but you'll certainly be able to speak the language. It goes into a certain part of the brain by repetition and gets lodged there. That's how we do it. Morse code's a language. Hear the sound. Oh, that's it. Yeah. Another one for you, the letter M. Right. Tell me what I've just sent. All you got to do is the 23 letters you them. Yeah. But there is a sequence to those letters that sets the sounds apart and differentiates them. If you see something like that, you should have trouble reading it if you've learnt properly. Because we don't learn this, you'd have to sit down. Oops. I have absolutely no idea. Yeah. Sorry about the fluff there. That's my hands, I'm afraid. So, we don't want to be recognising this stuff. Yeah. This is all processed subconsciously. And I struggle with this. I have to actually start to make the sounds to read this kind of thing. You know, it's very, very difficult if you learn CW properly to read that stuff. Okay, bad systems and good systems. As we saw with the Morse tree, there are bad ones. This is the group, learning groups that you will find in American Morse, American taught Morse, or it certainly used to be, perhaps they're changing over now. And you will find it in this box here. This is the MFJ 414 Classroom Morse Tutor. And this thing, when you can get it to work and read the manual, which is 85 pages thick, is actually a very good Morse tutor. For a tutor, not so much for learning yourself, but it's a good tutor tool. It's all kinds of things. Unfortunately, it's designed to be programmed with a computer that went out of date in 1995. So I actually try to... yeah, see, you can't actually do an awful lot with it these days, but it is actually a very good tutor. It costs 400 quid. Yeah, one of those things. That's how much it costs. So the way to learn Morse is by, we've heard Father Farnsworth, the guy who talked about the delayed timing of the letters. Now we're going to need to talk about Ludwig Koch, or Koch, whatever his name is, I don't know how you pronounce it. And Koch developed a system for military telegraphers around 1930. And he developed a sequence of letters, and this is the order that they learnt in. You'll see one or two slight regional variations of this, but this is generally how it's done. Notice that we're not learning all the letters and all the numbers and all the punctuation, like I wrote in a school, standing up, yes sir. We start learning a few simple letters, but each of these letters has a particular recognisable sound. So you can start to differentiate it from an early age when you're in the process of learning. And we're starting to put some punctuation into it, look already. Common punctuations. Full stop, not used that often on CW, but it's there for a decimal point. Some people put a decimal point in the frequency. The equal sign. That's a natural pause. So when you've completed a sentence and you want time to think, you just send. In Europe, they send. Oops, no. Da da di di da da, comma. So in Europe, you'll hear that. In the UK and English-speaking countries, you typically hear that. So this is the Koch sequence. And you learn it in this order. So we already learnt these two letters. Yeah. So you should already got. Yeah. Pay attention at the back. Yeah. You. Let's try again. Yeah. 3 letters now. You're getting there, aren't we? It's actually not hard. Yeah. So this is a Koch sequence. Fast character speed, 20 words a minute plus, so you can't count the characters, you can't count the elements of the characters. Long gaps between, 4 or 5 seconds, really slow yourself down. Give yourself time to think. And here we go, Donald Farnsworth. So Ludwig Koch developed a system of instruction in the 1930s. There were no delays between the letters. This guy, German, didn't mean muck about. Straight in there, got him in there, hit him with a big stick, and started sending that sequence with no delays. Yeah. But he progressed slowly, and he kept adding a letter, each with a unique sound, so they didn't get mixed up with the letter they heard before. That's the beauty about Koch's system. Characters introduced slowly, starting with K and M, as we've just done tonight. But Farnsworth, he developed the delay in his characters. His teaching system was to play a fairly fast character, about 17 words a minute, and stretch them out. So combining these two with the right sequence of letters, with the right timing, and the timing for Morse, by the way, is based on the word Paris. How many words a minute you send in? Paris. Oops, sorry, hold this thing down. Paris. With the correct spacing, the word Paris, you should get the correct word speed. So in so many words a minute, if it's 12 words a minute, you can repeat Paris 12 times within 1 minute. That's how the Morse timing comes about. And how does it go into our brain? A little bit of psychology now. Freud's iceberg theory. Good is this. This, if you understand this, sports psychology, just about anything you want to do, think about the iceberg. Up here, above the sea, along with the seabirds and all the skulls and the penguins up here, this is where we live. This is the conscious mind up here. It's where we live. The person we think of as me. Looking out tonight, you're listening to me, you're processing things consciously. Yeah? When you get in your car and drive home tonight, you'll be talking to your wife or talking to somebody in the car. You're not thinking about driving. You don't have to do because you've practiced it. You've repeated it. Driving a car is down here. Yeah? Stored knowledge, memory. He called it the preconscious, but it's subconscious really. The preconscious is split into 2 areas. Yeah? And a rabbit runs out in front of your car, you go down here. Right down into the unconscious. Instincts, bang, foot on the brake. You don't even think about it. Yeah? How this information gets from up here when you start getting into a car for the first time and take a driving lesson, we go through experience. We get in a car, we don't know what the hell we're doing with it, we drive up the road at 3 miles an hour, but eventually through repetition, we drive conscious experience into subconscious, and where it's stored for instant recall with the appropriate stimulus. It becomes auto. If we give the right stimulus, we get auto recall, and from that we get an action. This is learning CW. We hear the letter, yeah, it's repeated. Repeat it often enough, it drives it into the subconscious. When we hear it the next time, it's instantly recalled and we see the letter. Just like flashing up in front of your eyes, yeah? We don't have to think about lookup tables, we don't have to think about the pattern. Hear the sound. Was it? How easy was that? That is driving experience, repetition, auto recall, action. That's how you learn a language, and that's what Morse is. It's a language. 90% of our brain power is barely under our control, or not at all under our control. Because when you actually do learn Morse, and you plug your Morse key into a transmitter for the first time and switch it on, the first thing that happens is this. All our fears come rushing out, and you go, and freeze. Yeah, and this can be controlled. It won't be easy the first time you use a Morse key. Some people just glide into it. You start sweating. It'll trickle down your brow, and your hand will be shaking. Yeah, and somebody replies to you, "Oh my God, now what?" So yeah, what the hell do I do now? Your brain gets vacuumed out. All this just disappears. Yeah, you can't spell your name. You've forgotten what day it is, what you had for breakfast. Nothing. But anyway, you'll get through it. Yeah, you get a tutor. You want a friend, really, to talk to. So that's how we learn Morse. We don't learn by looking at it. We learn by listening to it. The conscious mind can't multitask. Yeah, despite what every woman in the world will tell you, you can't. The subconscious mind does it very well indeed if you let it. So how can we learn Morse? What can we rely on? One of the best ones I found, if you want to learn online and have your results stored for your next lesson, something that will constantly remind you and score your progress, learn CW online, LCWO. It's free. You can just register for it. And of all the sites I've found and I've been coaching people, this is probably the best. You'll hear people like G4FON, as a software package, he's dead now sadly, brilliant Morse tutor. Some rather aggressive ideas, but a brilliant Morse tutor. There's an FON program you used to download. I'm not sure if it still runs on Windows, but it's very, very good. Morse Code Ninja is another good one. Morse Code World works quite well. I still prefer this one. And Morse Free. There are dozens of them. When I talked earlier about it's never been a better time to learn CW, it hasn't. You've got everything going for you. Every possible resource is out there to help you learn CW. And the RRL, they have not so much an online tutor, but they have storage and back copies of Morse tapes and Morse recordings. You can go online, download all these things, all these lessons. RSGB just say we're going to turn up on 3.5555 on a Tuesday night maybe, and there we go. So they're not quite as advanced as the RRL, but there are some dedicated CW operators in the RSGB who work very, very hard. And on 80 meters, when 80 meters was working properly before we height to the solar index, then this frequency around about 3.555 and 3.550 was busy at nights with slow Morse, and it's really, really good. There are organizations that will help you. These people here, CW Ops, these people are killers. Now, CW Ops are very good. They have a mentoring system, and you will learn with a tutor. You'll be assigned a tutor. But CW Ops is driving you into contest operation. That's what they want. Yeah. And the organization, to join them, you have to be vetted. You have to have several conversations with several worthy, good name members who might recommend you for membership. But like going to the RAC Club in London, I'm a little bit. I worry a bit with elitism. I find if they want to be elite, fine, okay about it. But I do worry a little bit about the principle of elitism when you're learning. And they will insist on you going straight to a paddle. And we'll come to that in a moment. Long Island CW Club is quite good, but again, it's American. You know, they're running strange hours. In this country, FISTS is a good organisation, and in fact, we'll talk about the FISTS Morse tutor in a minute. But these people will take anybody. They can let me in, so there we go. And the rise of the machine. Now, when I learnt CW back in the day, back in the early 80s, a wonderful machine came on the market called the Daton D70 Morse tutor. And this thing just sent random groups of numbers and letters. And it was, I couldn't believe this thing. It was great. A little box, you could put it in your car and drive around with it. And you just indoctrinated you with Morse code. It wasn't the best system in the world, but it was available and it was quick and you could always turn it on at a click of a switch. Now, the world is full of them and some really good ones. This one, I have to thank Dean for bringing this tonight. I have one of these. I opened the kit today. The main board was missing. So I had to email Paul and say, I'm terribly sorry, we've got all bits in the box. This thing is the FMT, the FISTS Morse tutor from the FISTS organisation. And Kanga do it as a kit. They work with FISTS. So this is probably one of the best little Morse tutors you can buy. So this thing has pre-programmed lessons in it. It works on a Koch system. You can send with it. You can attach it to a radio with the auxiliary socket and you can practice over FM. You can put a tone into your radio. It does all kinds of wonderful things, this. Basically what this thing did for 400 quid, you know, this thing does for 53 quid built, if you want it built, 40 quid if you want it as a kit. And there's very little to it as a kit. They do this one called the UCPO, the code practice oscillator. So what I've been using tonight with the key. And this thing has two modes. You can switch into key practice. Yeah. Or if you switch it on, holding the key paddles together and let go, it should, in a moment, start sending you random groups. Not as sophisticated as the FMT by any means. 30 quid for a kit. Bit of a pig to build. The mechanics are, the box is an odd shape and you have to couple the controls over, so it's a bit fiddly, but it's a really good little kit to start with. Headphones, auxiliary output again on it. Yeah.
It's not, you don't put them off. The review.
But it's a good little Morse tutor. That's it. But this one, this is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Can't go wrong. Be careful out there are practice oscillators like this one that don't do anything else other than make a squeaky noise. Yeah. And there are Morse readers. Now this will read Morse, sort of. But there are Morse readers. This one does not read your keying, so you can't check your keying. But you can connect the aux socket to a cheap Chinese reader, which you can buy on eBay for 9 quid, or connect it to a computer and it'll read you Morse. Don't start sending Morse at all until you've got a mastery of the characters, because timing is everything. You have to be able to have good timing. Oh, it switched off. You have to have the rhythm of the character speed, yeah? So it's very important you listen to Morse, absorb it, let it wash over you, get stuck in your brain before you start to send. Otherwise, you'll pick up bad habits. This is all muscle memory. Yeah, when you're playing golf, it's muscle memory, isn't it? Casting a fishing rod, muscle memory. Eventually, after you've got it in the tree and knocked it into the canal, muscle memory. So we learn muscle memory. If we learn muscle memory incorrectly, it's an absolute bugger to get it out again. I used to coach archery when I could actually pull things back in strong enough. And the number of people that came with very bad technique, and you have to try and deconstruct that technique, put a blindfold on them and shoot them with just a target on a wall, just let them just feel the muscles to destroy all that bad memory. So learn properly, learn the rhythm, learn the pattern of the Morse, then start sending. Yeah. You've got plenty to do without touching a key at all. But there's all kinds of stuff out there. This thing is called HamCube. It seems to be popping up everywhere. This is the T20 from Kanga. Yeah, that is the tinier version of this. Yeah, called the PT20, and that's the FMT. So they are really, really good investments if you're learning Morse. You put them in your pocket, walk away with them. Yeah. Any questions? Silence.
Did you know it?
Yeah. 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 Certainly.
Oh, well, saying that sponge when they're 8, 12 months
Yeah.
old and things, but for example, at my age, it's sort of sick.
Don't you believe it? Seriously. I try to think how old I was in 1999. Scary. Yeah. Not quite 70. Yeah. Embarrassingly not quite 70. I was a Morse man back in the day, but I've forgotten. 30 odd years of lack of use. Get back like that.
Question. The datum.
Yep.
Morse tutor. Is it still relevant?
Yes. Yes, it is. It's quite relevant. Yeah. Yeah, that's perfectly relevant. Perfectly relevant. It's, you will learn faster with a more advanced Koch-based trainer, but it's still relevant. Still relevant.
There is a delay. You can delay it. Speed it up and delay the thing. So basically, you can sort of get it to what you want.
Yeah. Just take you a little bit longer, and you'll get a little bit more complication with reversals, where you've got B and V. Yeah, you start to pick up reversals if you don't get the numbers and letters in the right order. Start recognizing.
It doesn't explain. It doesn't tell you what it was first.
No, it doesn't.
That's the disadvantage.
Yeah, it doesn't have a screen on the front. And don't forget, we're listening and seeing a letter. Yeah, listening. Quick word about types of key: straight key, and paddle key. Now, I am completely convinced that you shouldn't be starting on a paddle key. Why not? If I ask you to remember 3 blind mice, I'm going to send 3 blind mice on this. And so on, I don't think there's any one of you who couldn't come out and do that, because 3 blind mice is lodged in your subconscious from a child, and all you're doing is straight out of the arm onto the paddle, onto the key. If you are sending Morse for the first time, you don't want any complication. You want to be able to get hold of something that lets your brain control your arm in a very simple way, up and down. Yeah. If I said to you, there's a grand piano in the corner, play 3 blind mice on it. I don't know if anybody can play piano. I'm sorry, 1 or 2 of them will be able to play piano, but I can't. I would struggle, because you have to learn to play the piano before you can get a tune out of it. And that requires a lot of bum notes. Yeah, and that's exactly what will happen if you try learning Morse on a paddle. Yeah, the thing to do is to learn Morse on a straight key, have the straight key plugged into the radio, and occasionally practice with the paddle. And you will be amazed how difficult these sodding things are. I have had to use one of these because I've now got the budgie claw in my hand, and it's very difficult. I'm struggling now with Morse all the way, even with a paddle. And you will get so frustrated because you'll hit a dot and 2 dots will come out and you'll miss a bloody dot off the R, and it'll just, oh God, and you're just pulling your hair out. It takes the enjoyment out of it. Yeah. Learn the paddle at your leisure while you are using a straight key. Yeah. And there's ways and means of using a straight key, which we can talk about later. Okay, anything else? No? Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for your time. We really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Don't forget to check the video description, where you'll find additional information about the video you've just watched, along with links to products used and to the Haddai's website. If you enjoyed this presentation, please feel free to hit that like button. Maybe you'd also consider subscribing and clicking the notification bell so we can let you know the next time we release another video. Thanks again for watching.